So this is from, again, the Collected Teachings, and this is from the chapter Reading the Natural Mind, and this is a subset of that chapter entitled Insight Meditation Vipassana. If you have faith, it doesn't matter whether you have studied theory or not. If our believing mind leads us to develop practice, if it leads us to constantly develop energy and patience, then study doesn't matter. We have mindfulness as a foundation for our practice. We are mindful in all bodily postures, whether sitting, standing, walking, or lying. And if there is mindfulness, there will be clear comprehension to accompany it. Mindfulness and clear comprehension will arise together. They may arise so rapidly, however, that we can't tell them apart. When there is mindfulness, there will also be clear comprehension. When our mind is firm and stable, mindfulness will arise quickly and easily, and this is also where we have wisdom. Sometimes, though, wisdom is insufficient or doesn't arise at the right time. There may be mindfulness and clear comprehension, but these alone are not enough to control the situation. Generally, if mindfulness and clear comprehension are a foundation of mind, then wisdom will be there to assist. However, we must constantly develop this wisdom through the practice of insight meditation. This means that whatever arises in the mind can be the object of mindfulness and clear comprehension, but we must see according to anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Impermanence, anicca, is the basis. Dukkha refers to the quality of unsatisfactoriness, and anatta says that it is without individual entity. We see that it's simply a sensation that has arisen, and that has no self, no entity, and that it disappears of its own accord. Just that. Someone who is deluded, someone who doesn't have wisdom, will miss this occasion. He won't be able to use these things to his advantage. If wisdom is present, then mindfulness and clear comprehension will be right there with it. However, at this initial stage, the wisdom may not be perfectly clear. Thus, mindfulness and clear comprehension aren't able to catch every object, but wisdom comes to help. It can see what quality of mindfulness there is there and what kind of sensation has arisen. Or, in its most general aspect, whatever mindfulness there is or whatever sensation there is, it's all Dhamma. The Buddha took the practice of insight meditation as his foundation. He saw that this mindfulness and clear comprehension were both uncertain and unstable. Anything that's unstable and which we want to have stable causes us to suffer. We want things to be according to our own desires, but we suffer because things just aren't that way. This is the influence of an unclean mind, the influence of a mind which is lacking wisdom. When we practice, we tend to become caught up in wanting it easy, wanting it to be the way we like it. We don't have to go very far to understand such an attitude. Merely look at this body. Is it ever really the way we want it? 1 minute, we like it to be one way, and the next minute, we like it to be another way. Have we ever really had it the way we liked? The nature of our bodies and minds is exactly the same in this regard. It simply is the way it is. This point in our practice can be easily missed. Usually, if whatever we feel doesn't agree with us, we throw it out. Whatever doesn't please us, we throw it out. We don't stop to think whether the way we like and dislike things is really the correct way or not. We merely think that the things we find disagreeable must be wrong, and those which we find agreeable must be right. This is where craving comes from. When we receive stimuli by way of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind, a feeling of liking or disliking arises. This shows that the mind is full of attachment. So the Buddha gave us this teaching of impermanence. He gave us a way to contemplate things. If we cling to something which isn't permanent, we'll experience suffering. There's no reason why we should want to have these things in accordance with our likes and dislikes. It isn't possible for us to make things be that way. We don't have that kind of authority or power. Regardless of how we may like things to be, everything is already the way it is. Wanting like this is not the way out of suffering. Here we can see how the mind which is deluded understands in one way and the mind which is not deluded understands in another way. When the mind with wisdom receives some sensation, for example, it sees it as something not to be clung to or identified with. This is what indicates wisdom. If there isn't any wisdom, we merely follow our stupidity. This stupidity is not seeing impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. That which we like we see as good and right. That which we don't like we see as not good. We can't arrive at Dhamma this way. Wisdom cannot arise. If we can see this, then wisdom arises. The Buddha firmly established the practice of insight meditation in his mind and used it to investigate all the various mental impressions. Whatever arose in his mind, he investigated like this. Even though we like it, it's uncertain, it's suffering, because these things which are constantly rising and falling don't follow the influence of our minds. All these things are not a being or a self. They don't belong to us. The Buddha taught us to see them just as they are. We stand on this principle in our practice. We understand then that we aren't able to just bring about various moods as we wish. Both good moods and bad moods are going to come up. Some of them are helpful and some of them are not. If we don't understand correctly regarding these things, we won't be able to judge correctly. Rather, we will go running after craving, running off following our desire. Sometimes we feel happy and sometimes we feel sad, but this is natural. Sometimes we'll feel pleased and at other times disappointed. What we like we hold as good, and what we don't like we hold as bad. In this way, we separate ourselves further and further from Dhamma. When this happens, we aren't able to understand or recognize Dhamma, and thus we become confused. Desires increase because our minds have nothing but delusion. This is how we talk about the mind. It isn't necessary to go far away from ourselves to find understanding. We simply see that these states of mind aren't permanent. We see that they are unsatisfactory and that they aren't a permanent self. If we continue to develop our practice in this way, we call it the practice of vipassana, or insight meditation. We say that it is recognizing the contents of our mind, and in this way we develop wisdom. Samatha, or calm meditation. Our practice of samatha is like this. We establish the practice of mindfulness on the in and out breath. For example, as a foundation or means of controlling the mind, by having the mind follow the flow of the breath, it becomes steadfast, calm, and still. This practice of calming the mind is called samatha meditation. It's necessary to do a lot of this kind of practice because the mind is full of many disturbances. It's very confused. We can't say how many years or how many lives it's been this way. If we sit and contemplate, we'll see that there's a lot that doesn't conduce to peace and calm, and a lot that leads to confusion. For this reason, the Buddha taught that we must find a meditation subject which is suitable to our particular tendencies, a way of practice which is right for our character. For example, going over and over the parts of the body, hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, and skin can be very calming. The mind can become very peaceful from this practice. If contemplating these 5 things leads to calm, it's because they are appropriate objects for contemplation according to our tendencies. Whatever we find to be appropriate in this way, we can consider to be our practice and use it to subdue the defilements. Another example is recollection of death. For those who still have strong greed, aversion, and delusion, and find them difficult to contain, it's useful to take this subject of personal death as a meditation. We'll come to see that everybody has to die. Whether rich or poor, we'll see both good and evil people die. Everybody must die. When we develop this practice, we find that an attitude of dispassion arises. The more we practice, the easier our sitting produces calm. This is because it's a suitable and appropriate practice for us. If this practice of calm meditation is not agreeable to our particular tendencies, it won't produce this attitude of dispassion. If the object is truly suited to us, we'll find it arising regularly, without great difficulty, and we'll find ourselves thinking about it often. We can see an example of this in our everyday lives. When lay people bring trays of many different types of food to offer the monks, we taste them all to see which we like. When we have tried each one, we can tell which is most agreeable to us. This is just an example. That which we find agreeable to our taste we'll eat. We won't bother about the other various dishes. The practice of concentrating our attention on the in and out breath is an example of a type of meditation which is suitable for us all. It seems that when we go around doing various different practices, we don't feel so good. But as soon as we sit and observe our breath, we have a good feeling. We can see it clearly. There's no need to go looking far away. We can use what is close to us, and this will be better for us. Just watch the breath. It goes out and comes in, out and in. We watch it like this. For a long time, we keep watching our breathing in and out, and slowly our mind settles. Other activities will arise, but we feel like it is distant from us, just like when we live apart from each other and don't feel so close anymore. We don't have the same strong contact anymore, or perhaps no contact at all. When we have a feeling for this practice of mindfulness of breathing, it becomes easier. If we keep on with this practice, we gain experience and become skilled at knowing the nature of the breath. We'll know what it's like when it's long and what it's like when it's short. We can talk about the food of the breath. While sitting or walking, we breathe. While sleeping, we breathe. While awake, we breathe. If we don't breathe, then we die. If we think about it, we see that we exist only with the help of food. If we don't eat ordinary food for 10 minutes, an hour, or even a day, it doesn't matter. This is a coarse kind of food. However, if we don't breathe for even a short time, we'll die. If we don't breathe for 5 or 10 minutes, we will be dead. Try it. One who is practicing mindfulness of breathing should have this kind of understanding. The knowledge that comes from this practice is indeed wonderful. If we don't contemplate, then we won't see the breath as food. But actually, we are eating air all the time. In, out, all the time. Also, you'll find that the more you contemplate in this way, the greater the benefits derived from the practice, and the more delicate the breath becomes. It may even happen that the breath stops. It appears as if we aren't breathing at all. Actually, the breath is passing through the pores of the skin. This is called the delicate breath. When our mind is perfectly calm, normal breathing can cease in this way. We need not be at all startled or afraid. If there's no breathing, what should we do? Just know it. Know that there is no breathing. That's all. This is the right practice here. Here we are talking about the way of samatha practice, the practice of developing calm. If the object which we are using is right and appropriate for us, it will lead to this kind of experience. This is the beginning, but there is enough in this practice to take us all the way, or at least to where we can see clearly and continue in strong faith. If we keep on with contemplation in this manner, energy will come to us. This is similar to the water in an urn. We put in water and keep it topped up. We keep on filling the urn with water, and thereby the insects which live in the water don't die. Making effort and doing our everyday practice is just like this. It all comes back to practice. We feel very good and peaceful. This peacefulness comes from our one-pointed state of mind. This one-pointed state of mind, however, can be very troublesome, since we don't want other mental states to disturb us. Actually, other mental states do come, and, if we think about it, that in itself can be the one-pointed state of mind. It's like when we see various men and women, but we don't have the same feeling about them as we do about our mother and father. In reality, all men are male, just like our father, and all women are female, just like our mother, but we don't have the same feeling about them. We feel that our parents are more important. They hold greater value for us. This is how it should be with our one-pointed state of mind. We should have the same attitude towards it as we would have towards our own mother and father. All other activity which arises we appreciate in the same way as we feel towards men and women in general. We don't stop seeing them. We simply acknowledge their presence and don't ascribe to them the same value as our parents. Undoing the knot. When our practice of samatha arrives at calm, the mind will be clear and bright. The activity of mind will become less and less. The various mental impressions which arise will be fewer. When this happens, great peace and happiness will arise, but we may attach to that happiness. We should contemplate that happiness as uncertain. We should also contemplate unhappiness as uncertain and impermanent. We'll understand that all the various feelings are not lasting and therefore not to be clung to. We see things in this way because there's wisdom. We'll understand that things are this way according to their nature. If we have this kind of understanding, it's like taking hold of one strand of a rope which makes up a knot. If we pull it in the right direction, the knot will loosen and begin to untangle. It'll no longer be so tight or so tense. This is similar to understanding that it doesn't always have to be this way. Before, we felt that things would always be the way they were, and in so doing, we pulled the knot tighter and tighter. This tightness is suffering. Living that way is very tense. So we loosen the knot a little and relax. Why do we loosen it? Because it's tight. If we don't cling to it, then we can loosen it. It's not a permanent condition that must always be that way. We use the teaching of impermanence as our basis. We see that both happiness and unhappiness are not permanent. We see them as not dependable. There is absolutely nothing that's permanent. With this kind of understanding, we gradually stop believing in the various moods and feelings which come up in the mind. Wrong understanding will decrease to the same degree that we stop believing in it. This is what is meant by undoing the knot. It continues to become looser. Attachment will be gradually uprooted. Disenchantment. When we come to see impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self in ourselves, in this body and mind, in this world, then we'll find that a kind of boredom will arise. This isn't the everyday boredom that makes us feel like not wanting to know or see or say anything, or not wanting to have anything to do with anybody at all. That isn't real boredom. It still has attachment. We still don't understand. We still have feelings of envy and resentment and are still clinging to the things which cause us suffering. The kind of boredom which the Buddha talked about is a condition without anger or lust. It arises out of seeing everything as impermanent. When pleasant feeling arises in our mind, we see that it isn't lasting. This is the kind of boredom we have. We call it nibbida, or disenchantment. That means that it's far from sensual craving and passion. We see nothing as being worthy of desire. Whether or not things accord with our likes and dislikes, it doesn't matter to us. We don't identify with them. We don't give them any special value. Practicing like this, we don't give things reason to cause us difficulty. We have been suffering and have seen that identifying with moods cannot give rise to any real happiness. It causes clinging to happiness and unhappiness and clinging to liking and disliking, which is in itself the cause of suffering. When we are still clinging like this, we don't have an even-minded attitude towards things. Some states of mind we like and others we dislike. If we are still liking and disliking, then both happiness and unhappiness are suffering. It's this kind of attachment which causes suffering. The Buddha taught that whatever causes us suffering is in itself unsatisfactory. The Four Noble Truths. Hence, we understand that the Buddha's teaching is to know suffering and to know what causes it to arise. And further, we should know freedom from suffering and the way of practice which leads to freedom. He taught us to know just these four things. When we understand these four things, we'll be able to recognize suffering when it arises, and we'll know that it has a cause. We'll know that it didn't just drift in. When we wish to be free from this suffering, we'll be able to eliminate its cause. Why do we have this feeling of suffering, this feeling of unsatisfactoriness? We'll see that it's because we are clinging to our various likes and dislikes. We come to know that we are suffering because of our own actions. We suffer because we ascribe value to things. So we say, know suffering, know the cause of suffering, know freedom from suffering, and know the way to this freedom. When we know about suffering, we keep untangling the knot. But we must be sure to untangle it by pulling it in the right direction. That is to say, we must know that this is how things are. Attachment will be torn out. This is the practice which puts an end to our suffering. Know suffering, know the cause of suffering, know freedom from suffering, and know the path which leads out of suffering. This is Magga. It goes like this: right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. When we have the right understanding regarding these things, then we have the path. These things can put an end to suffering. They lead us to morality, concentration, and wisdom. Sila, Samadhi, Panya. We must clearly understand these four things. We must want to understand them. We must want to see these things in terms of reality. When we see these four things, we call this Satcha Dhamma. Whether we look inside or in front or to the right or to the left, all we see is Satcha Dhamma. We simply see that everything is the way it is. For someone who has arrived at Dhamma, someone who really understands Dhamma, wherever he goes, everything will be Dhamma. Right view, understanding mind. In meditation practice, we work to develop mindfulness so that we will be constantly aware. Working with energy and patience, the mind can become firm. Then, whatever sense phenomena we experience, whether agreeable or disagreeable, and whatever mental phenomena, such as reactions or of gladness or dejection, we will see them clearly. Phenomena are one thing, and the mind is another. They are separate matters. When something contacts the mind and we are pleased by it, we want to pursue it. When something is displeasing, we want to escape from it. This is not seeing the mind, but running after phenomena. Phenomena are phenomena. Mind is mind. We have to separate them and recognize what the mind is and what phenomena are. Then we can be at ease. When someone speaks harshly to us and we get angry, it means that we are deluded by phenomena and are not following after them, and are following after them. The mind is caught by its objects and follows after its moods. Please understand that all these things we experience externally and internally are nothing but deceptions. They are nothing certain or true, and pursuing them, we lose our way. The Buddha wanted us to meditate and see the truth of them, the truth of the world. The world is the phenomena of the six senses. Phenomena are the world. If we don't understand the Dhamma, if we don't know the mind and don't know phenomena, then the mind and its objects get mixed together. Then we experience suffering and feel that our minds are suffering. We feel our minds are wandering, uncontrollably experiencing different unhappy conditions, changing into different states. That's not really the case. There aren't many minds, but many phenomena. But if we aren't aware of ourselves, we don't know our minds, and so we follow after these things. People say, my mind is upset, my mind is unhappy, my mind is scattered. But that's not really true. The mind isn't anything. The defilements are. People think their minds aren't comfortable or happy, but actually the mind is the most comfortable and happy thing. When we experience the different unsatisfactory states, that is not the mind. Make note of this. When you're experiencing these things in the future, remember, Ajahn Chah said, this is not the mind. We are practicing to teach the mind, the old mind. This original mind is unconditioned. In it, there is no good or bad, long or short, black or white, but we are not content to remain with this mind because we don't look at and understand things clearly. Dhamma is beyond the habits of the ordinary mind. Before we have trained well, we may mistake wrong for right and right for wrong. So it's necessary to listen to teaching to gain understanding of Dhamma and be able to recognize Dhamma in your own mind. Foolishness is in the mind. Intelligence is in the mind. Darkness and delusion exist in the mind. Knowledge and illumination exist in the mind. It's like a dirty plate in your home that's filthy with grime and grease, or a dirty floor. Using soap and water to wash it, you can remove the dirt. When the dirt is gone, you have a clean plate or a clean floor. Here, the thing that is soiled is the mind. When we practice correctly, a clean thing is found, just like with the dirty floor that is made clean. When the dirt is scrubbed off, the condition of being clean appears. It's only the dirt that obscures it. The mind in its natural state, the true mind, is something that is stable and undefiled. It is bright and clean. It becomes obscured and defiled because it meets with sense objects and comes under their influence through liking and disliking. It's not that the mind is inherently defiled, but that it is not yet established in Dhamma, so phenomena can stain it. The nature of the original mind is unwavering. It is tranquil. We are not tranquil because we are excited over sense objects, and we end up as slaves to the changing mental states that result. So practice really means searching to find our way back to the original state, the old thing. It is finding our old home, the original mind that does not waver and change following various phenomena. It is by nature perfectly peaceful. It is something that is already within us. Understanding phenomena. The causes for not being peaceful are also within us. They manifest when we are deluded by internal and external phenomena. What we have to do is train the mind in correct view. We don't see correctly, so we are going a different way, and we are thus experiencing everything as too short, too long, too something. Correct means seeing the characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and lack of self in all we experience, meaning our bodies and minds. All things, just as they are, display the truth, but we have biases and preferences about how we want them to be. We are practicing to become like the Buddha, the knower of the world, and the world is these phenomena abiding as they are. When objects of mind arise, whether internally or externally, those are what we call sense phenomena or mental activity. The one who is aware of phenomena is called, well, whatever you want to call it, it is okay. You can call it mind. The phenomenon is one thing, and the one who knows it is another. It's like the eye and forms it sees. The eye isn't the objects, and the objects aren't the eye. The ear hears sounds, but the ear isn't the sound, and the sound isn't the ear. When there is contact between the two, then things happen. Our attitude towards these 5 khandhas, the aggregates of existence, body, sensations, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness, these heaps that we see right here should be one of dispassion and detachment, because they don't follow our wishes. I think that's probably enough. If they survive, we shouldn't be overly joyful to the point of forgetting ourselves. If they break up, we shouldn't be overly dejected by that. Recognizing this much should be enough. Whether we are undertaking insight meditation or tranquility meditation, just this is what it's really about. But these days, it seems to me that when Buddhists talk about these things according to the traditional explanations, it becomes vague and mixed up. But the truth isn't vague or mixed up. It remains as it is. So I feel it's better to seek out the source, looking at the way things originate in the mind. There's not a lot to this. It is said this world of beings ruled by aging and impermanence is not long-lasting. Beings means us. We are called human beings. There are beings different from us, such as animal beings, cattle and fowl, for example, but for all of them, aging is a fact of their existence, the decay of the various constituents of their physical bodies. These things are always changing. They don't have freedom to remain, but must follow the way of sankhara, conditioned phenomena. The world of beings is thus, and we find ourselves always dissatisfied. Our emotions of love and hate never bring us satisfaction. We never feel we have enough, but are always somehow obstructed. Simply speaking, as we say in our local idiom, we are people who don't know enough. We aren't satisfied to be what we are. So our minds waver endlessly, always changing into good and bad states with the different phenomena we encountered, like a cow not satisfied with its own tail. With unstable minds, we are always in this unsatisfied state. No matter what we experience, we become slaves to desire. Being a slave is a state of great suffering. A slave must always obey the master, even when told to do something that might get him killed. But with our craving, we are always eager and willing to follow its orders. Because of our self-cherishing habits, we are thus ruled. This world of beings actually has no ruler. It is we ourselves who rule our own lives, because we have the power to decide on doing good or doing evil. No one else does these for us. This world of beings has nothing of its own. Nothing belongs to anyone. Seeing this with correct view, we will release our grip, just letting things be, coming into this world and realizing its limitations. We do our business, we seek a profit in the way of building parami, the spiritual perfections. That's about right. Where is the Dhamma? The entire Dhamma is sitting here with us. Whatever you experience is right, just as it is. When you've gotten old, don't think that's something wrong. When your back is aching, don't think that's some kind of mistake. If you are suffering, don't think that's wrong. If you're happy, don't think that's wrong. All of this is Dhamma. Suffering is merely suffering. Happiness is merely happiness. Hot is merely hot. Cold is merely cold. It's not that I am happy, I am suffering, I am good, I am bad, I gained something, I lost something. What is there that can be lost by a person? There's nothing at all. Gaining something is Dhamma. Losing it is Dhamma. Being happy and comfortable is Dhamma. Being ill at ease is Dhamma. It means not grasping onto all these conditions, but recognizing what they are. If you have happiness, you realize, oh, happiness is not permanent. If you are suffering, you realize, oh, suffering is not permanent. Oh, this is really good. That's not permanent. This is bad, really bad, not permanent. They have their limits, so don't hold so firmly onto them. The Buddha taught about impermanence. This is the way things are. They don't follow anyone's wishes. That is noble truth. Impermanence rules the world, and that is something permanent. This is the point we are deluded at. So this is where you should be looking. Whatever occurs, recognize it as right. Everything is right in its own nature, which is ceaseless motion and change. Our bodies exist thus. All phenomena of body and mind exist thus. We can't stop them. They can't be stilled. Not being stilled means their nature of impermanence. If we don't struggle with this reality, then wherever we are, we will be happy. Wherever we sit, we are happy. Wherever we sleep, we are happy. Even when we get old, we won't make a big deal out of it. You stand up and your back hurts and you think, yeah, that's about right. It's right, so you don't fight it. When the pain stops, you might think, that's better. But it's not better. You're still alive, so it will hurt again. This is the way it is. So you have to keep turning your mind to this contemplation and not let it back away from the practice. Keep steadily at it, and don't trust in things too much. Trust the Dhamma instead, that life is like this. Don't believe in happiness. Don't believe in suffering. Don't get stuck in following after anything. With this kind of foundation, then whatever occurs, never mind. It isn't anything permanent. It isn't anything certain. The world is like this. Then there is a path for us, a path to manage our lives and protect ourselves. With mindfulness and clear awareness of ourselves, with all-encompassing wisdom, that is the path in harmony. Nothing can deceive us because we've entered the path. Constantly looking here, we are meeting the Dhamma at all times. You could say we are sentient beings working to become awakened beings, bodhisattvas. This is just the same as the Lord Buddha did. When the mind is obscured by desire, aversion, and delusion, that is a sentient being. But whenever we have the Brahmavihara, the divine abidings of loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity established in our hearts, then we can be called excellent beings. Or we could also be called bodhisattvas. Even beings without such qualities can develop them and eventually become enlightened. In the past, the one who was to become the Lord Buddha was also merely a human being, but he developed himself to be an extraordinary being, one who was suffused with the Brahmaviharas, and thus he was called the Bodhisattva. Then, through his persistent contemplation to know the truth, to know the facts of impermanence, suffering, and lack of self, he attained to full knowledge and was awakened as the Buddha. So don't get the idea that there was only one Buddha. The one Buddha is actually the Satchidhamma, the truth, and whoever is awakened to that is Buddha. There may be hundreds of thousands of Buddhas, but they will all follow in this same track, that of correct view. Yes, there is one Buddha, meaning right view. Whoever awakens to that is not different from the Buddha. So the Buddha and sentient beings are not far apart. This is something to be realized within. Realizing the truth of original mind, we will see that it is impossible to describe or give to another. There is no way to show it, nothing to compare it to. It is beyond speech or concept. Teaching others, we rely on externals to transmit ideas, but realization of the truth must be accomplished by each individual. The Buddha taught us to look at whatever appears. Things don't stay. Having arisen, they cease. Ceasing, they appear again. And having appeared, they cease. But a confused, uninstructed person doesn't want it to be this way. If we meditate and become tranquil, we want to remain like that and don't want any disturbance. But that isn't realistic. The Buddha wanted us to first look at the facts and know these things as deceptive, and then we can really have tranquility. When we don't know them, we become their owners, and the conceit of self-view comes about. So we have to go back to the origin and find out how it happened that way. We have to understand the way things really are. the way things contact the mind, and how the mind reacts, and then we can be at peace. This is what we have to investigate. If we don't want things to happen the way they do, we won't have peace. Wherever we may try to escape to things still happen the same way. This is their nature. I think I'll stop there. It's difficult to stop reading. It's just so good. It's interesting reading Lumpur Cha because his words are so simple, but they strike right to the heart. They're just they're so uniquely said and so perfectly said that they just seem to, at least for myself, make sense each time. And yet the mind can still be deluded. So it's very inspiring and helpful just hearing it over and over again. That last part that I read was from Paul Breiter, and there was a time that he was, I think after he disrobed, he would continue to see Lumpur Cha, and he got into Zen quite a bit, and so he asked Lumpur Cha to read some Zen, and Lumpur Cha said, yeah, it's the same thing. He didn't object to anything there, and so this, I think part of this was coming from Paul's talking about the original mind, and then the Buddha, and then Ajahn Chah, Lumpur Cha was really, I think, riffing on that quite a bit. So I don't see him talking about the original mind in so many other contexts.
Paul Breiter was really getting into Mahayana after he disrobed, and he had the Heart Sutra, and he brought it to Lumpur Cha, and he went back to Lumpur, and he read the Heart Sutra. He translated it into Thai. So it's like, there is no path, there is no goal, there is no form, no feeling. It's all emptiness. And so Ajahn Chah then said, so there's no Paul Breiter as well.
Yeah.
He was kind of getting puffed up about it. So there's no Paul Breiter.
Yeah, there's a book by Paul Breiter called Venerable Father, so it's actually his stories with Lumpur Cha. They're quite beautifully written and also very humorous. So if you have a chance to read Venerable Father and you haven't, I recommend it. I think he later wrote a book, One Student, Many Masters.
One Monk, Many Masters.
One Monk, Many Masters, yeah.